Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was in Avatar. The world could not maintain the peace that Naruto fought for in Jiraiya's memory. With a heavy heart, he forsakes his time and seals himself away in hopes of a peaceful future. What happens when a girl who wishes to express herself finds the sealed body of the hero of the flame, unleashes him, and learns from him? What will the future hold for the world? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 10, The Northern Siege. Appa groaned as he hovered less than 20 feet above the Northern Ocean. The trio had been riding on Appa for 2 days straight in hopes of getting to the North Pole faster, but the constant traveling was taking its toll on everyone. Sokka was complaining every 5 minutes, making the normally chipper Aang argue with him, while Katara finally stopped playing mediator between the two. They were brought out of their tense flight by a wall of spiky ice rising from the ocean in hopes of stopping Appa. Aang desperately steers Appa out of harm's way, but the bison is eventually caught by the ice. When the trio realized it was actually waterbenders who stopped them, they let them know of Aang's status as the Avatar, allowing them passage into the city. As the road through the waterways of the northern tribe, Sokka spotted a young woman with snow-white hair, bright blue eyes, and dressed in noble attire. Stunned by her beauty, he immediately resolved to meet her and talk to her. During the feast, Arnuk, chief of the tribe, was proud to tell his people of Aang's arrival, much to the boy's embarrassment. There was also another thing he had to say. "We also celebrate my daughter, Yu's 16th birthday. My beloved daughter is now of marrying age," he said while presenting the girl Sokka saw earlier to the audience. Sokka smiled at his chance to prove himself to her and the chief, but he wasn't the only one to do so. Now, Master Pakku and his waterbending students will perform. An elderly man stood before the people of the tribe along with 2 students before the 3 of them began to bend the water in various shapes, forms, and styles. The water twisted against one another, spiraled like a typhoon, and finally met in one large clash, making the large room get covered in a thin mist. Aang and Katara were astounded by the display and couldn't wait to learn from Pakku. With Zuko, the Fire Prince, was laying in his room on his ship in anger. Zhao had just taken his entire crew for an expedition to the North Pole, leaving him and Iroh alone on the ship. Iroh had just left for a calming walk away from the ship, leaving the prince unaware of the danger he was now in. The pirates that the gang ran into were hired by Zhao to kill Zuko by blowing up his entire ship. They sneakily climbed aboard with barrels full of blasting jelly, a highly explosive substance much like cannon powder. By the time Zuko heard a noise of someone else on the ship with him, the jelly exploded and lit the ship with a fiery inferno. Iroh heard the explosion and turned to see the wrecked ship, eyes widening in horror. "Zuko!" he cried as he ran to see if his nephew survived. Northern Tribe, 2 days later. Much had happened in the last couple days since the trio arrived. Pakku told of the rule forbidding women to learn waterbending. Aside from healing, Katara learned that her gran was born in the Northern Tribe before she left for the Southern Tribe. Pakku and Katara had a bending battle to see if he would teach her, and finally Katara learned that her gran was to marry Pakku many years ago. After learning of Katara's relationship with the woman he had loved, Pakku left to think over a few things. Yu, on the other hand, was lost in a whirlwind of thought and emotion since she learned that Sokka's gran actually went against the customs of the tribe for the sake of her own happiness. During the 2 days, Sokka attempted to woo the princess, but she kept him at arm's length as well as accepted his company. The mixed messages confused the Southern Tribe warrior, and he tried to talk to Yu after Katara's fight with Pakku. It turns out that Yu was given a betrothal necklace before Sokka even had the chance to get to know her. Driven by custom and tradition, Yu accepted at the price of her own happiness. Sokka was devastated at this, but he still wished her a happy future before Yu surprised him with a passionate kiss beneath the moonlight. After the kiss, Yu told him that she still liked him a lot, but she was confused on what to follow, years of tradition or her own heart. Sokka reluctantly told her that he would wait patiently for her to choose, and the two decided to stay friends until she finally decided. After having time to think it over, Pakku finally put aside the traditions, and took Katara as his student, much to her and Aang's joy. They spent another few days in study and Katara showed that, with the right guidance, she was a true prodigy of waterbending. She absorbed everything Pakku taught her like a sponge, and he couldn't have been more proud. Aang on the other hand was not as focused as Katara and fooled around more than practiced. It wasn't until the trio had been staying at the northern tribe for 5 days that Sokka and other warriors noticed soot mixed with the falling snow. It only meant one thing: the Fire Nation was nearly there, and their numbers were extremely high. With the shinobi donned and gear ready for a full-blown battle, Naruto and Mai flew through the skies on a large snowy owl named Koyuki. Naruto had felt the many sources of energy making their way north and knew without a doubt that the Fire Nation had finally decided to attack the northern tribe. The 4 days before he and Mai left Wan's library were incredibly fruitful for the duo. Naruto spent hours each day manipulating the sand from both Gaara's gourd and the desert itself. At first, he barely moved the sand at all with his chakra, and he was going nowhere. However, when he thought of Gaara, his will for the people of Suna, and the bonds the two Jinchuriki had in life, his control grew and the sand became much easier to manipulate. After discovering the secret, he had over 500 Kagebunshin stay in the desert and practice while he helped his student with her attempts at making Chidori Senbon. Mai had a single clone helping her decrease the time needed to learn, but even that wasn't enough for the first 2 days. Naruto discovered her problem during the 3rd day: she wasn't using enough shape manipulation, and the shots of lighting were unable to stay stable long enough to fly from her hand. The two spent the 3rd day having Mai get a feel for manipulating the chakra enough to do so, and the 4th day seeing the results. It was much better than Naruto had hoped for, since Mai had finally gained enough control to launch over 20 Senbon from her hand. The Uzumaki was pleased with her progress and congratulated her, making her blush at his praise. The Nara had slowly started opening her heart more to her friend and teacher, and she realized that she had slowly begun falling for him. It scared her at first since she was afraid of losing what she already had with him, but it also gave her butterflies in her stomach thinking of them as a couple. He was kind and caring, helpful and wise, and always looked to her for who she is and not what she was. However, she reluctantly put aside her feelings in favor of helping Naruto defend the northern tribe. Naruto's empathic senses felt apprehension and desire from his student, and he grew slightly worried. While he may have been dense as a child, he knew what her desire was. The Uzumaki wasn't sure about her feelings for him, especially since the visions he kept on having were become clearer each time. The woman in them slowly started taking the form of an older-looking Mai, making Naruto fear for the vision's chances of coming true. He didn't want to lose his potential family, and he didn't want them to lose him, but the inevitable coming of Jubi made him realize that he would either live during their death, or he would die for them. He shook himself out of his thoughts and focused on getting to the North Pole as fast as possible. Something big was going to happen, and he knew it would be world-scale big. With Zhao and Iroh. We're in the process of finally writing history, General Iroh. The North Pole may have survived many years before, but their city will finally fall today. Iroh, who had finally agreed to join Zhao's war effort after finding no trace of Zuko, gave the admiral a skeptical look. I doubt that, Zhao. There's a reason why they have survived for so long. The moon and ocean spirits give constant vigilance and protection to the northern tribes, after all. Yes, I know you fear the spirits, Iroh. I've even heard rumors of your supposed trip to the spirit world. However, the moon and ocean made a terrible mistake many years ago. And that is, they chose to live a life with those of the mortal plane, leaving them vulnerable to capture or death, Zhao explained with a sinister grin. Zhao, the spirits are not to be trifled with. They don't just affect certain nations or people, they affect the whole world. Yes, well, the world will surely be affected when I take my place in history, as Zhao the Moon Slayer. With Aang. The siege of the north had begun and Aang took to the front lines in hopes of taking out as many Fire Navy ships as possible. He and Appa flew down to meet the armada in battle, and Aang used his wits, speed, and quick thinking to sabotage many ships before they even got close to the wall defending the city. However, many ships were still able to break through the icy wall and storm the city with their large numbers. The Avatar saw that his initial plan had failed, and he retreated back to the city. When Appa landed, both the Bison and the Airbender collapsed in exhaustion, making Katara and Yu grow worried. Sokka had volunteered to join the other warriors on an infiltration mission, so he wasn't with them. "I can't do it. I can't do it," Aang said solemnly. "What do you mean?" asked Yu. "I must have taken out at least a dozen of those ships, but there's just too many of them. I can't beat them all." "But you have to. You're the Avatar." "I'm just one kid," Aang said solemnly. They were all interrupted by the sounds of flapping wings, and they turned to see the shinobi duo land a large snowy owl next to Appa. Once they got off, Naruto said, "Thanks for the ride, Koyuki-san." "Anytime, Uzumaki-san," she replied before she disappeared in a plume of smoke. "Naruto." "My." Katara called out happily before she ran up to him and hugged the two shinobi, much to Mai's slight annoyance. "You finally made it," Aang said just as happily. "We thought you wouldn't make it in time." "Yeah, well, we're here now and ready to help," said the Uzumaki with a smirk before he turned serious. "Aang, you need to go to the moon and ocean spirits now. They're in danger, much more than any of us." "What do you mean?" asked Yu. "How are they in more danger than we are?" "The spirits are vulnerable," Mai explained. "They gave up their spiritual forms in favor of forms that would let them live alongside humans and mortal beings." "How do you know?" asked Katara. "We learned it in a library. Now hurry up and find them. Mai and I will help hold off the soldiers." "Go," Naruto ordered before he and Mai leaped away to join the battle. Aang turned to the two girls and said, "We better hurry. Do you know where the spirits might be?" The princess took a thoughtful pose for a few seconds before her eyes widened in realization. "The Spirit Oasis. There are 2 koi fish there that have lived in the tribe for many years. They must be the moon and ocean." "All right, let's hurry and get to them before anyone else does," Katara said as the 3 made their way to the Spirit Oasis, unaware that Zhao and a group of 4 soldiers were on their way as well. With the shinobi, the duo kept roof jumping their way to the battle at high speeds in hopes of turning the tide. Naruto gave a feral smirk before he pumped chakra into his next leap, making him rise way above the warring nations. He flew through hand seals before he bit his thumb and cried, "Kuchiyos no Jutsu." A large plume of smoke appeared above the battlefield before Shun dropped down and crashed into the ground below, throwing back the 2 sides with the force of the landing. The Fire Nation looked on in fear since they were told of Naruto's ability to summon a toad of incredible size. The water tribesmen looked on in amazement at the sight of the toad while some pointed at the golden-haired man standing on its head. Naruto turned to the Fire Nation troops and called out, "People of the Fire Nation, this is your one and only warning. Return to your ships now or risk your lives in battle against Naruto Uzumaki, the child of prophecy and hero of the flame." Paku, who was leading the northern tribe members, looked on in shock at the declaration. While there wasn't as much info on the hero of the flame and the water tribes as there was in other parts of the world, the natives were still able to learn enough to know that he was like a force of nature in his time. But this man can't be him. He disappeared from the world millennia ago. The Fire Navy grew nervous at Naruto's declaration. Their nervousness increased when Mai appeared next to him. It was now common knowledge within the Fire Nation that Mai was his student, and that the girl was worth a small army of firebenders. While their numbers were that of an armada, they still had the Uzumaki to deal with. "You have 2 minutes to comply before my student and I begin our assault. Make your choice now." Less than half of the soldiers immediately ran back to the ships in fear while the rest stood their ground. One brave, or foolish, group of firebenders all launched a stream of fire at Shun, but the Gama chief felt nothing from the flames against his wet face. The soldiers began to sweat in panic while Naruto released the cork on his gourd and said in a deathly calm voice, "Time's up." Sand flew out of the gourd and raced towards the soldiers while Naruto stood as still as a statue. The only parts of his body that moved were his fingers that were slightly hidden under his crossed arms. The sand latched onto many of the soldiers' legs and lifted them high into the air, while Mai silenced them with her Senbon. "Sensei, do you want me to proceed?" "Do as you wish." Mai smirked at that before she pumped her chakra, releasing the weight seals that were on her, and vanished in a burst of speed. To both sides, she was nothing but a dark red blur that struck without warning and without mercy. Each soldier she hit had a Senbon in their neck or a kunai in their lower back, immobilizing them. And if it wasn't Mai that reached them, it was the sand controlled by the last Uzumaki. Paku and the other soldiers of the water tribe watched on in amazement as the enemy was easily picked apart by the two shinobi. The waterbending master shook out of his shock before he turned to the others and cried out, "For the water tribes." His cry rallied the others and they rushed in to help their new allies. Spirit Oasis. Aang sat in a meditative position in front of the koi fish and attempted to create a spiritual connection with them. Katara, Yu and Sokka, who had been tasked with guarding Yu, stood behind him while Zuko was frozen against the wall courtesy of Katara. The prince attempted to take him again while he meditated, but Katara and the full moon of the evening battle proved to be too much for his ambition. Suddenly, the three water tribe natives saw the gates to the oasis get blasted open by Zhao and his firebenders. Katara once again tried to fight them off, but their numbers were too much for even her. Sokka was about to help her, but one of the soldiers held a flaming fist to Yu's head, making him back off. Zhao smirked at the sight of the out-of-it airbender and his prize. He strode up to the pond and captured the white koi fish, otherwise known as the moon spirit's mortal form, into a tattered bag. Due to the cut connection, Aang woke up from his meditation and looked on in shock as the moon lost its silvery glow in favor of a reddish one. Back at the battlefield, Naruto and Mai saw the moon glow red, and the Uzumaki clutched his head in agony. Mai grew worried and rushed to his side, supporting him as he fell to a knee. "Naruto, are you okay?" "And no. Take me to Aang and the others." "The moon is in trouble," he answered as he held his head in pain. He was hearing wails of fear and agony within his mind as well as a slow leakage of Yuki from the once peaceful moon. Hurry." Mai nodded and the two disappeared in a swirl of leaves while Shun disappeared in a plume of smoke. When the duo reappeared, they saw Zhao finishing his rant on how he'd be remembered as the slayer of the moon. "Zhao, don't do it. You have no idea of the consequences that will come if we lose the moon." Aang pleaded to the admiral. "He is right, Zhao," said Iroh as he walked into the oasis. His eyes noticed Zuko escape his prison as well as Mai supporting Naruto before they narrowed in on Zhao. "General Iroh. Why am I not surprised to discover your treachery?" "I'm no traitor, Zhao. The Fire Nation needs the moon just as much as the world does. It creates a balance." He noticed Zhao clutch the bag tighter and he growled out, "Whatever you do to that spirit, I'll unleash on you tenfold. Let it go now." Get in line, Iroh," Naruto said as he slowly stood on his own. Mai stood close to him just in case while he finished, "If he does anything to that fish, I won't hesitate to kill him in the most painful way imaginable." Zhao growled in anger before he slowly let the fish out of the bag and back into the water. His rage was boiling though, and he sliced at the koi with fire bending as soon as the fish was fully out. To the others, it was like time slowed down as the moon disappeared from the sky and the land was colored in a gray hue. Naruto stiffened in place before he clutched his head, closed his eyes, and cried out in horror, making everyone turn to him in shock. Chakra and Yuki were leaking from him as he fell to a knee and his head was pounding with cries of fear, despair, panic, rage, and utter hopelessness. His empathic senses were screaming in his mind, nearly driving the Uzumaki mad by the sheer feeling of fear and darkness. Mai grabbed his head and made him face her. "Naruto, calm down. Please, you have to control it. Don't give in, Naruto. She cried in panic as tears began to spill from her eyes. However, Naruto couldn't hear her since her voice was drowned out by the cries of terror he was hearing in his mind. His skin began to slowly peel off, showing a bloody surge of energy flowing beneath his skin. His whisker marks began to darken and grow jagged while his hair grew wilder and his canines and nails elongated into fangs and claws. His eyes snapped open, revealing nothing but blood red within, and scared my stiff. Am I? He groaned out. Run. I can't control it. He then noticed Zhao try to run, and his animalistic instincts took over before he disappeared in a blur of speed and reappeared with a clawed hand stabbed straight through Zhao's chest, with his heart in hand on the other side. Zhao stood in shock as he saw his still beating, bloody heart clutched in a clawed hand in front of him. I warned you, Naruto growled out. I told you that it would be the most painful way imaginable. He then opened his mouth, where a glowing sphere of Yuki and chakra was forming, before he released a beam of power that immediately disintegrated the top half of the Admiral's body. The lower half fell lifeless to the floor, while Naruto jerked his head back and roared, sending a shockwave out with its force. He then launched himself out of the oasis and into the city, and Mai immediately stood up from her position. Naruto, wait. She called out as she followed him. It was like the end had come for the warring nations as Naruto killed anyone in his way, friend or foe. Mai was able to keep up with him since he was slowly walking through the streets on all fours like a fox. His skin was still slowly peeling off and bursting with energy, but Mai didn't care as she ran up to him and hugged him from behind. He turned his head in anger and glared at her before her teary amber eyes met his bloodlust-filled crimson ones. Please Naruto, she begged, please stop this. This isn't who you are. You're Naruto Uzumaki, the child of prophecy, the hero of the flame, my teacher, my friend, the one I cherish the most. Her words were slowly breaking through as his anger-filled orbs were slowly turning into confused and concerned ones. Through her tears, she smiled at this and continued, You aren't a monster, Naruto. You need to stop this, please. She then clutched him tighter while his energy slowly burned her skin. She refused to let go as she finished, Please come back to me. The blonde Jinchuriki groaned in pain as his head was pounding with the negativity from the leaking Yuki once held back by the moon. He was slowly losing himself again before the land was once again covered in a silvery glow. The Uzumaki turned his head skyward and saw the moon residing within the sky once again, making the negativity slowly calm down. He slowly regained control of himself and began releasing the Yuki he had called upon before he turned and embraced his student. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I never meant for this to happen. Mai slowly let him go and placed a warm hand on his whiskered cheek. She saw pain and sadness in his eyes and gave him a small reassuring smile before she leaned in and kissed him. His eyes widened in shock as Mai pulled back and calmly replied, I forgive you, Naruto. She then hugged him again with a smile while Naruto unconsciously held her with his face still looking shocked. Slowly the shock turned into a small smile of his own before he held Mai tighter, making her smile grow. Within the mindscape, Kurama sighed in relief. That was a close one. I actually thought that he'd lose himself completely after that idiot killed that fish. Thank Kami-sama that Mai calmed him down, but I hope that she can keep him that way. Now that the Jubi has gotten a small taste of freedom, it'll try even harder to break free or form again. Time skip, the next day. While Naruto and Aang, who had entered the Avatar state and attacked the Fire Nation, rested in the infirmary, the others stood on a balcony watching the sun rise in the sky. You had given up her life that the moon spirit gave her and returned it to the dead fish. Sokka and Arnook were devastated at this, but Arnook still couldn't help but feel proud of his daughter's sacrifice. She restored the balance and became the new moon spirit who would watch over the world. So yes, he was sad, but he was also happy to know that she was still with him. Katara had spent her time healing the injured while also checking up on Aang and Naruto every now and then. She noticed that Mai hadn't once left Naruto's side and held his hand in her own as he rested. She had even slept in the chair she sat in, while her head rested on his bed, and her hand still clutched his, the night before. Katara smiled to herself at the extreme care Mai had for him, and knew that the Fire Nation girl had fallen hard for the whiskered blonde. It makes me wonder what will happen next between them, she mused to herself. It was 2 hours later before Naruto slowly stirred awake. Aang had woken up an hour before and left the infirmary to help his friends while Mai still stayed in the room. He saw that she had her head on his bed and was sleeping with a near-death grip on his hand, making him smile. With his free hand, he slowly brushed the back of his fingers against her cheek, making her stir slightly before she noticed he was awake. She immediately embraced him and said, "I was so worried. You just passed out after you came out of your rage." Naruto hugged her back and replied, "Yeah, that happens when I'm not in control. Mai, I'm so sorry you had to see me in that kind of state. It's not something I like people seeing." She gave him a reassuring smile and said, "It's okay, I told you the night before that I already forgive you." Naruto smiled back before he noticed her slightly burnt skin. "Mai, why didn't you have someone heal you?" he asked worriedly before he began using medical jutsu to restore her skin. Mai turned her head away in embarrassment and answered, "I never left your side. You really had me worried for you. You should have at least gotten someone to take a look at you. The burns could have increased in degree and you could have dash." He was interrupted when Mai leaned up and kissed him on the lips, making his eyes widen in surprise. When she separated, she looked him dead in the eye with a growing blush and stated, "I wasn't going to leave you, Naruto. I cared too much about you to leave you alone while you were passed out." Naruto sighed in defeat before he looked her in the eye and replied, "What brought that on, that kiss?" She didn't answer right away and just buried her head in his chest. "I like you, Naruto. I never felt anything like this before. I like the feeling of actually giving my heart to someone, and it makes me happier to know that I could give it to you. But Mai, what about the vis dash?" "I don't care." She interrupted. "I don't care if those visions you keep having say that either you or who you keep seeing will die. As long as I can be with you now, I'll be able to die happy." She looked him in the eyes, her own burning in determination, and she said, "I want you to take my heart and let me have yours. I want to be by your side, not just as your student, but as someone precious to you. That's all I want." Her gaze slowly averted from his and Naruto sat on his bed in silent shock. She just threw the concerns he had out the window and wanted to risk her life just so that she could be with him. It amazed him that she felt so strongly about the whole thing, but he couldn't deny that it felt nice to have someone tell him that he mattered to them in a romantic way. He slowly grabbed her chin and made her look at his warm smile before he leaned in and captured her lips with his. Her eyes widened in surprise before she got into the kiss and wrapped her arms around his neck in hopes of deepening it. They kept at it for a little over 2 minutes before the need for air was too much and they separated. Her eyes met his hopefully, and he smiled to her again. "If it means that much to you, then I accept your feelings, Mai. Having you with me has made me happier than I ever was after the loss of Yuzu. I honestly thought that I'd never really find true happiness again, but each day I spend with you makes those thoughts slowly fade from my mind. Nothing would make me happier than having you with me." Mai smiled to him as a tear leaked from her eye before the two embraced once again, hearts and souls full of a growing hope and happiness. However, darkness was still slowly spreading with the temporary loss of the moon spirit, and the gang still had many trials ahead of them. Chapter 11, Murky Visions. It was 3 days after the northern siege that we find the gang heading to an Earth Kingdom base by air. The trio was situated on Appo while the shinobi were riding on Koyuki. Katara couldn't help but look back at the student-slash-teacher duo with a smile. It was obvious to her that they were incredibly more open with one another after Naruto's episode at the North Pole. Thinking about the blonde's moment after Zhao killed the first moon made her shudder. The pure anguish and struggle on the Uzumaki's face was that of a man seeing their worst nightmare and making futile attempts to end it. When she asked Mai, the Nara told her that Naruto had deep connections with people's emotions and feelings. When the moon vanished, the Jubi tried to break free from its drastically weakened prison by using the nearest power source. That source was Naruto and Kurama due to them having the closest connection to Jubi. While the Jubi tried to break free using Naruto, the blonde was able to feel all of the terror, pain, and despair from the victims killed by the beast in the past. It was like being an observer witnessing a bloody massacre, and being unable to do a thing about it. Still, while Naruto went through all of that, he looked as if nothing was wrong. However, the rest of the gang knew that he was holding back what had happened to him. Why he was, they didn't know. That didn't stop Mai from trying to help him. The waterbender was broken out of her thoughts by the approaching base. An uneasy feeling came over her as they approached, and when she saw Koyuki completely ignore the island and fly past it, the feeling only increased. 4 days later, Naruto was seen resting on the branch of a nearby tree, while Mai practiced the first step of the Rasengan in the clearing below. Like Katara, Naruto felt a disturbing feeling coming from the Earth Kingdom base, and he had Koyuki fly past it, and land about half a mile away from it. The shinobi decided to just wait for the trio to find them after dealing with whatever the base dealt them. It was a bit irritating to Naruto when he found out that he had no balloons or rubber balls to help his student in the 3 steps of his father's prized ninjutsu. So, he had to start her off with the bare minimum, pure chakra and nothing else. The first step was rotation. Naruto had Mai begin by having Mai build her chakra into her palm, like she does with the Chidori, and have it spin. It was much easier said than done for her since it took a great deal of focus just to gather chakra to her palm without the assistance of hand seals. Naruto had helped her get a decent start on the first day by slowly demonstrating the step to her. The chakra slowly gathered to his palm and covered it in a bluish glow before Mai saw it slowly start to spin and naturally roll up into a rough sphere. He kept on demonstrating for her until she felt as if she got it and began her training. That had been 4 days ago, and now she looked as if she was beginning to make progress. On her palm, her chakra was barely beginning to move and rotate, but that was as far as she was able to get. She released her chakra and sighed in frustration before she felt 2 strong arms wrap around her warmly and hold her close. Her frustration left, and she smiled at the feeling. "Just relax, Mai," Naruto said calmly into her ear. "You'll get it down. You just have to keep calm and focus." He lifted up her right arm, palm facing up, and used medical chakra to soothe her aching nerves. "Try again," he told her softly. Still smiling, Mai focused her chakra into her palm and willed it to spin. It came easier to her this time, and the energy span into a rough sphere that warbled around the edges. Her smile grew slightly before she cut the chakra flow, turned in Naruto's arms, and mashed her lips with his. She quickly deepened it by wrapping her arms around his neck, and he reciprocated by wrapping his own around her waist. Just when Mai was hoping to go even further with their kiss, the duo heard someone clear their throat and separated. They turned to see the trio standing behind them. Katara had a smile on her face while Aang looked away with a blush and Sokka just rolled his eyes. "Are we interrupting?" asked the waterbender with her smile still in place. Mai muttered something about troublesome people with terrible timing while Naruto just gave a small chuckle and let go of the Nara. "We were just waiting for you 3. What took so long anyway?" "That general wanted to force Aang into the Avatar state in order to end the war quicker," Sokka explained. At first Aang agreed, continued Katara while giving Aang a pointed look. The airbender looked away in shame as she finished, but he soon saw reason and we left. Naruto nodded in understanding while Mai stayed silent. "So, what's the plan now?" "We're going to head back to Omashu and see if Bumi will teach Aang earthbending. Bumi should have plenty of experience to teach him." Naruto and Mai nodded before the blonde summoned Koyuki, and the gang made their way to the city. For some reason, Mai had a sense of foreboding about the city, and was confused as to why. 2 days later. It was a shock to the trio when they saw Omashu taken over by the Fire Nation. Mai and Naruto were less shocked since they had expected the Fire Nation to begin their invasion of the Earth Kingdom. The gang made their way to a sewer pipe opening that released the waste of the city into the chasm beneath the city. Aang and Katara used bending to keep themselves clean of the waste, leaving Sokka to get hit full blast behind them. Naruto had used Kamui to remove Mai from their plane before he moved right through the wall and into the city. While it separated them from the trio, the tactic still allowed Naruto and Mai to get in the city unseen. Once inside, Naruto released Mai and the duo made their way across the rooftops in search of Bumi. It wasn't even 10 minutes later that they found a man, woman, and baby boy being escorted through the streets by some soldiers. Naruto cursed quietly, making Mai turn to him in confusion. "What is it?" "Your family is down there. If I had to guess, your father is most likely in charge here." Mai turned to the family and swore when she saw that it really was her parents and baby brother. "What do we do?" Naruto hummed and thought before he suggested, "I think you'll be relatively safe if you talk to them. They're your family, so they shouldn't be willing to arrest you. Me on the other hand." He let the sentence hang and Mai understood. "So, you want us to split up?" "Yes. You stay with your family and see what's been going on since we left, and I'll see if I can find the others. We'll meet up when we can." Mai nodded and kissed him on the cheek while whispering, "Good luck." "You too, and stay safe," he urged before he disappeared in a flock of ravens that began to search the city. Mai sighed and muttered, "Time for a reunion, I guess." With Naruto. The ravens flew all over the skies above the city in search of its ruler before one of them spotted Aang freeing Flopsy and riding him through the city streets. Another raven saw Katara, Sokka, and many citizens of the city making their way through the gates under the guise of having a deadly and highly contagious illness called pentapox. It was actually quite funny seeing the guards freak out and keep a good distance out of fear of infection. One last raven, this one being the real Naruto, flew close to Mai and kept an eye on her. He saw that he was correct in his assumption and that she was welcomed by her parents warmly. They asked her about what she had been up to and where he was, and Mai was able to keep them at bay with vague answers and questions of her own. The shinobi duo found out from Mai's parents that Ozai had increased his forces and military strength, and that Iroh and Zuko were made fugitives of the Fire Nation. The reunion was interrupted when they heard the commotion caused by the sickly citizens of the city, and Mai's father ordered the guards to let them go to keep the city clean. Mai had to commend the Water Tribe siblings on their successful plan. Pentapox sounded like a highly contagious illness, and she could understand why her father fell for it. The following day, Mai and the raven form of Naruto walked through the streets seeing the sights when in reality they were still searching for Bumi. Naruto's other ravens were still searching, and one of them finally found him held in a metal container that left only his face visible. The container was held by a large crane high above the ground, keeping the king away from any earth to bend. By the time the raven dispelled and Naruto received the information, the guards announced the arrival of Princess Azula, making them curse her timing. It turns out that Azula wasn't alone, and that she brought Ty Lee with her. Mai, playing her part of a returned daughter, made her way to greet them while Naruto made his way to Bumi. When he made it to the king, he transformed back into his regular form and ready to kunai to cut the chain. "I can't let you do that, my friend," Bumi stated. Naruto raised a brow and questioned, "Why not?" "You're a prisoner of the Fire Nation and Aang needs you to dash. I can't be the one to teach Aang. I need to stay here." Naruto still looked confused before he felt Bumi's emotions for his city and his people. "You're staying for their sakes. You don't care what the Fire Nation does to you, but you care about what happens to your people." Bumi nodded with a smile and Naruto asked, "What about Aang? Who should he look for to take him earthbending?" "Aang needs to find someone who waits and listens to the earth itself before acting, someone who has mastered what is known as neutral gene. I can't be his teacher since I haven't mastered it myself." Naruto nodded at his statement. "You know that he'll still try to save you, right?" "I know, and I'll tell him what I told you when he does." Naruto nodded again and said, "I wish you good luck then, King Bumi." "And you as well, founder of the Shiro Renge," he replied with a smile before Naruto disappeared in a distorted swirl. 2 days later, Naruto sighed as Koyuki flew after Appa over a dense forest with a tree larger than all of Konoha in the center. He heard voices speaking to him and his mind telling him to land and find them. He looked to Mai and she didn't seem to be hearing anything similar since she looked as relaxed as ever. He looked ahead and saw Appa slowly descending towards the treetops. His brows furrowed in confusion before he saw Appa resume his previous altitude and head away from the forest. His senses suddenly went into overdrive, and he saw a tornado heading for them all. Thinking fast, Naruto jumped off of Koyuki and flew through hand seals before crying out, "Futon, Josho Fushicho, Rising Phoenix." The wind picked up around him, and took the form of a large bird with glowing yellow eyes. The winged bird wrapped its wings protectively around himself, Mai, and Koyuki just as the tornado reached them. Aang tried something similar for his friends by surrounding them in a sphere of air. Unfortunately, the tornado's force was too much for both of their techniques, and the result was the two wind techniques backfiring and flinging everyone in separate directions to the forest below. The last thing Naruto saw before he hit the treetops was the tornado suddenly dispersing, leaving a calm sky. With Katara, the waterbender found herself trapped in some vines after her rough landing. Luckily for her, her wrists and hands were free, allowing her to bend the water and have it slice through the vines like a new katana through a piece of paper. After she was free, Katara made her way through the dense forestation of what she now realized was a swamp. The treetops were so thick that barely any light came through. With no way to see the sky above her, she resigned to just keep moving. With Aang, the airbender was able to soften his landing with the use of his birth element, saving him from any major injury. He still had a few scratches from when he crashed through the tree branches, but he was all right. He gazed around his landing area and sighed at the lack of major light. He was about to move on before he heard a girlish giggle behind him. He turned to see a girl dressed in noble attire with a winged boar next to her. The boar flew off and she followed it, giggling the entire way. The Avatar narrowed his eyes in confusion before he took off after them in hopes of finding answers. With Sokka, the Water Tribe warrior wasted no time taking out his machete and slicing through the vines of the swamp in search of his friends and comrades. "Guys, where are you?" he called out in hopes of hearing a reply. When he received none, he sighed before he resumed his trek. After cutting through a particularly thick patch of vines, he entered a small sunlit clearing of the forest, where a girl dressed in beautiful white robes floated before him. He took a couple of hesitant steps forward before his eyes widened in recognition. "You?" he whispered before he shook his head in denial. "This is just a trick of the light. Swamp gas. I hit my head during my fall. I'm going crazy," he said, listing off reasons as to why he was seeing the form of the dead Northern Tribe princess. He didn't want it to be real, he couldn't let himself believe so. She gave up her life for the world right after kissing him goodbye. She was supposed to be gone. His rant to prove he was seeing things didn't stop him from looking back to the girl. "You didn't protect me." Her voice echoed throughout the clearing. Sokka quickly wiped his eyes and saw that she was gone. He sighed and turned before jumping back in shock when he saw you standing right next to him. After falling back to the ground, he looked around the clearing and saw that he was alone. He sighed again before pulling out his machete and continuing. With Katara, the waterbender made her way through another brush of vegetation before she saw someone standing ahead of her with their back to her. "Hello? Can you tell me where I am?" she called out as she made her way to the new person. She then caught sight of the person's hairstyle and saw that it was exactly like hers, the same style her mother taught her to make. "Mom?" she whispered hopefully before she ran to the figure. Her face had a smile and happy tears as she reached the person and grabbed their shoulder. As she turned the figure to face her, she said, "I can't believe dash," only to stop short as the person she thought she saw proved to be nothing more than an old hollowed-out tree trunk. Katara fell to her knees in anguish at the feeling of losing her mother for the second time. It was too much for her to bear. With my. The student of the last Uzumaki jumped through the trees in search of her teacher or their companions. The forests of the swamp were so thick and the air was far too humid for her tastes. She soon saw that she was approaching a black-haired figure, and she landed a few feet away from them. "Excuse me, have you seen a bald kid, two people from the water tribes, or a yellow-haired man around here?" she asked. The person before her didn't respond and turned to face her. She saw that the person was a man that was dressed in a black shirt over a mesh one, black pants, a forest green flak jacket, and black sandals. His hair was styled in a pineapple-like fashion, his eyes were coal black, and he had a metal plate with a spiral leaf symbol attached to his left sleeve. She stared at him in confusion before he sighed and took out a white stick followed by a small metal container. He flipped the lid of the container, and she saw a flame appear where it opened. He then used the flame to light the white stick before he put the end that wasn't burning in his mouth and took a deep inhale. He then pulled out the stick and blew out some smoke before he looked to her lazily. "So, who are you supposed to be?" he asked in a bored tone as he kept using the burning stick. Mai wrinkled her nose in disgust at the smell in the air before she retorted, "Why should I answer you when you never answered my question?" The man sighed at her rebuttal and rubbed the back of his neck before Mai heard him mutter, "Troublesome girl." Her eyes widened in recognition and she quickly asked, "Are you a member of the Nara clan?" He raised a brow to her and replied, "What brought on that question?" "My name is Mai Nara, student of Naruto Uzumaki," she answered seriously. "Now I'll ask again, are you a member of the Nara clan?" "Naruto, huh?" he asked with a small smile while looking skyward. "So, he's still alive after all. Can't say that I'm surprised at that since he always looked younger than the rest of us." He then turned his attention back to her and said, "I'm Shikamaru Nara, the 16th head of the Nara clan and strategic commander of Konohagakure before its end at the hands of Sasuke Uchiha." Mai sighed in slight irritation and replied, "I just asked for your name, not for all of your troublesome titles and positions." She saw him smirk at her and she asked, "Why are you here? You were supposed to have died long before the Bending era." "Why indeed?" he asked with his smirk still in place. "Care to figure it out yourself?" She narrowed her eyes at him and thought of the possible reasons until two came to mind. "You're either a spiritual projection meant to help me, or I'm seeing things due to the heat and I somehow envisioned you. The first seems far more likely." Shikamaru nodded at her findings. "I'd say that you're correct on your first guess as well. So, the question that remains is, what do you need me to help you with? I guess I'm lost on my path of life or something equally as troublesome to try and figure out." The elder Nara chuckled at her statement. "Yeah, you're definitely a Nara." He kept chuckling at her, making the younger Nara's eye twitch in irritation. After he stopped, he looked back to her and asked, "So, what is it you think that you're having problems with?" "I don't think I have any issues to deal with. I'm happy learning from Naruto and being with him." He said in an unconvinced tone. "And the fact that either he or you will die is not an issue at all, right?" "Of course not," she replied heatedly. "Then why are you so emotional in your response?" "Because it's none of your business. Hey, I came here to help you, remember? I can't do that unless you let me know what I need to." "Yeah, right. You came to me, so you should already know enough about me to come up with some advice." True, I already know what I need to. That's why I know that the visions Naruto keeps having are bothering you. You can't bear to lose the one person who easily saw past the barriers you put up." "Stop it," she whispered. He continued as if ignoring her, "You don't want to lose the man who took the time to get to know the real you and help you more than anyone else ever did, even your family." "Shut up," she said in a louder voice. The thought of you or him dying before you could live a happy life as a family tears you apart inside. You'd rather see the world fall than lose him. Shut up," she cried before she quickly prepared a Chidori and stretched it towards her ancestor, unknowingly performing a perfect Chidori Iso, Chidori sharp spear. The extended lighting jutsu flew right through Shikamaru, who looked disinterested with what was going on around him. There was no puncture wound, no blood, and no exertion of pain. Admit it. You're scared of the future and what is to come. Mai fell to her hands and knees and had tears spill from her eyes. Just shut up, she begged in a defeated tone. I admit it, I don't want to lose him. He means everything to me and losing would. It would leave you as nothing more than an empty shell, finished the elder Nara. He sighed at the situation as he made his way to his descendant and placed a consoling hand on her shoulder. Listen, we all lose someone important to us eventually. I lost my mentor and guide when I was around your age. It was tough and I almost lost myself. But I realized that these things happen, and that the important thing to do is make sure that when they do happen, it won't be in vain. The vision also showed a girl, right? She nodded in affirmation. Then make sure that the girl in your future knows just what Naruto died for. Let her know that he died for a brighter future for both the world and his family. Mai slowly wiped the tears from her eyes and gained a small smile at her ancestor's words. Thank you, she whispered before he faded away, leaving Mai alone in the clearing. With Naruto. The Uzumaki sighed in frustration as he made his way through the dense swamp. The vibe he felt from the surrounding vegetation was unsettling, and he constantly felt as if he was being watched as if he were prey. Damn swamp. This place is so strange and annoying. There's something off about this place as well. Keep your wits about you, Naruto. Something isn't right here. Yeah. I know Kurama, he replied before he made his way into a random clearing of the swamp. The Jinchuriki narrowed his eyes as he saw 3 cloaked figures standing ahead of him with their backs turned. He disappeared in a burst of speed and made to grab one of them before he felt himself slip right through them. Those people aren't real. They're just illusions, stated the Kyuubi. Then why isn't the Sharingan dispelling them? I don't know. Before Naruto could question his tenet any further, he noticed the 3 figures move towards him and stand just 5 feet from him. He stood to face them and narrowed his eyes in suspicion. Alright, just who the hell are you 3? One of them sighed and spoke in a voice so familiar to Naruto that it made him freeze. Honestly, Naruto-kun, can't you even tell who your family is? The cloaks surrounding the figures all faded away into specks of light, revealing a blonde man, red-headed woman, and a girl with black hair that had red streaks in it. The man wore standard Konoha Jonin gear, and a white cloak with red flames licking the bottom of it. His blonde hair was spiked in all directions with 2 bangs framing his face, and his eyes were an electric blue. The woman wore a high-collared blue blouse underneath a loose tan dress. Her vibrant red hair reached her lower back and she wore a necklace with a red spiral pendant. The girl had a blood-red shirt with a sleeve only on her left arm, black cargo shorts, and used a headband around her neck, and a Fuinjutsu array wrapped around her exposed right arm. She had a deep blue left eye while her right was a piercing yellow, and she had 2 whisker marks on each cheek. Her hair was slightly shorter than the women, only reaching the tops of her shoulders, but it had a slight spikiness to it. Naruto couldn't speak since the people before him were Minato Namikaze, Kushina Uzumaki, and the young girl from his visions/dreams. He just stood before them, frozen like a statue, as they kept smiling to him. When his mind finally caught up to the real world, he closed his eyes and turned his back to them. You aren't here, none of you are. 2 of you are dead and the other isn't even alive to begin with. His voice began to break slightly as his eyes began to water. This isn't real. He felt a warm hand on his shoulder, making him tense before he turned to see his mother's warm smile. Not all things are as they appear to be, Naruto-kun. We're here to help you find your way again, explained Minato with a warm smile on his face as well. What do you mean? I'm fighting for peace again. I'm helping the Avatar and the world, said the whiskered blonde in confusion. While that may be true, there's still something holding you back, Toussaint, said the youngest-looking one of the group. Naruto turned to her in slight surprise before he gave a small chuckle. So, the visions were true. You really are my future child. She smiled to him and nodded. Yeah. And it's also the thoughts you have of me that hold you back, well, me and Kaa-chan. My. Yes. You're afraid of losing us or of us losing you. It keeps you from truly choosing to fight for peace. Of course, it does. I don't want to lose anyone else. He cried before he dropped his gaze to the ground. I've lost enough people already. Kushina hugged her child and held him close before Minato, and the girl did the same. We know, Sochi. We know how much you've lost. You left your friends Konoha to let them live their lives, you rebuilt Uzushiogakure, and made it a great nation again, and you lost it all in one fell swoop. You've lost more than any person should ever have to. But you know better than anyone that peace is not without a price, continued Minato. You've lost many things for peace, but it wasn't enough. I know it wasn't enough. Naruto cried, separating himself from them and punching a nearby tree trunk in anger. The whole tree shook as many leaves fell from the branches. I know better than anyone that it wasn't enough, and I know that I'll keep losing what's precious to me so long as I continue being the child of prophecy. He turned his gaze back to them, and the three saw his eyes full of defeat. I'm so tired of losing the ones I cherish. I just want it to end. The next thing he knew, a black and red blur flew at him and wrapped around his chest. He looked down and saw his future daughter crying into his chest, and he instinctively held her close. We know how much you've suffered, Toussaint. But no one else can take down the threats to come. Jubi, whispered the whiskered blonde. Yes. Aang will never have the strength or skill needed to do it. That leaves you to fight it, or let the world fall. She looked up into her father's eyes with a sad smile. It seems so unfair to ask you to do this, Toussaint, and I wish it didn't have to be you. But who else can do it if not you? Naruto looked to his parents and saw them nod to him with sad smiles of their own before he sighed. He brushed his hand through the girl's hair and smiled softly. I guess I have one last job to do. I mean, he gave a small foxy grin, what kind of father am I if I don't fight for my family? The other three had their smiles change from sad to proud, and they nodded to him before they began to fade away. Minato and Kushina were the first to go, leaving the fading girl and her future father. So, any chance I get to learn my daughter's name before I have to wait for her to be born? He asked with a grin. She giggled at his question and shook her head. Good things to those who wait, Toussaint, she said in a teasing voice before she completely faded away. Naruto kept his smile as he watched the specks of light drift away. I guess I need to be patient then. After talking to Hugh, the gang was happily making their way out of the swamp with new thoughts and feelings lingering in their hearts. Aang, having learned what his vision meant from Hugh, had a determined fire in his eyes. He knew who to look for to be his earthbending teacher, and he was excited. Katara and Sokka felt the need to see the war through to the end for the sakes of the loved ones they had lost. Mai felt as if a weight was lifted from her shoulders after her talk with her ancestor. As for Naruto, he felt at peace when he had his vision once again. The figures were the clearest they had ever been, and he smiled at the sight of his future family waving to him with loving smile. I won't give up, for their sakes. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.